Hello, and thank you so much for joining us today for our part two series of the SMGA Recovery Series for second and multi-generational adult former cult members. Today, we're going to be learning about overcoming barriers to healthy sexuality for SMGAs. Doni Whitsett, PhD, LCSW, LMFT, is a Fulbright Scholar and Clinical Professor Emerita at the USC Suzanne Dorp Peck School of Social Work, where she taught courses focused on neurobiology, trauma, mental health, and sexuality. As a trauma-focused psychotherapist in private practice, she has been working with cult-involved clients and their families for over 25 years. She is also AASECT certified as a sex therapist. Her specialties of cultic studies and sexuality often overlap due to the exploitation of human sexuality by high-demand abusive groups. Dr. Whitsett has presented to professional audiences, both nationally and internationally in Australia, Canada, France, Poland, and Spain. Her research activities include women's sexuality in China, sexual dysfunction in the military, and sexual issues of SMGAs. Her latest publication includes chapters on a modern psychodynamic approach with first-generation former cult members and global violence of women in cults.
So, what would you say is the most important sexual organ in your body? It isn't the breasts or genitals like you might think, it's the brain. Although sex takes place in our reptilian brain, the other parts of our brain can wreak havoc with enjoyable sex. This is because the thoughts, feelings, and neurochemicals that are activated before, during, and after a sexual encounter can either enhance or dampen the experience. A lot of the thoughts come from the attachment patterns that Meredith discussed. They are the bedrock of relationships. But these patterns, which are actually neural networks in the brain, can be changed with later secure relationships because the brain remains plastic throughout life. Other messages come from the cult in which you were raised, such as women should be subservient to men, which translates into being passive in bed. Same-sex relationships are an abomination, etc. Implanted, if you will, by misguided ideology and the need for control. These are old tapes that criticize, judge, and shame and play in the background like an old computer program that's obsolete but can't be deleted. These messages are barriers to healthy sexuality. There are a number of ways that have been found to be helpful in dealing with these messages. They are not mutually exclusive. I'm going to talk about some of them, and you may need to try a few to see what works for you. And maybe during the Q&A or discussion period, we can talk about, you can share some of the ways that have worked for you to deal with these unwanted thoughts. Whoops. So there are, I've kind of identified three approaches. The first step in dealing with the messages is to become conscious of them and recognize how automatic they are. The automatic nature of these thoughts is because of the conditioning that took place in the cult. In other words, you were conditioned to have these thoughts activated whenever sex was on your mind. Once you notice how automatic they are, you can look at them dispassionately and pretend to be a researcher, which helps you get some emotional distance from them. Some people call this a mindfulness technique of watching your thoughts go by like clouds without getting attached to them. They are just thoughts, not real. So that's the, so you can say to yourself, for example, this is an interesting thought. I wonder where it comes from. How did I learn it? Do I still believe it? Did I ever? Then you can challenge thoughts with healthier ones, such as, I'm entitled to enjoy sex. Sexuality is a gift from the universe or from God, whatever you believe. And you can remind yourself that some research studies should suggest that people with healthy lives, with healthy sex lives, live longer and have better mental and physical health. Another good way of dealing with these voices is taken from the internal family systems practice theory, which some of you may know. Now, I am not an IFS practitioner, clinician, but I found the concept of the protector to be very useful in this regard. It helps you see these thoughts not as enemies, but as friends that helped you survive in the cult. The theory goes that the mind contains many parts. Each part has a role, a job, if you will, and they all function for your benefit. The part that learned that sex was not acceptable, we would call a protector. Visualize the protector as a kind of compassionate warrior, a strong mythical or real figure from history or present day. In the cult, it protected you from being punished and feeling guilty and ashamed. It was working for your benefit at that time. However, its job is now obsolete, but it may not know that. It may not even know that you're out of the cult. So it keeps giving you these cautions in order to keep you safe. Rather than railing against the voice, see if you can befriend it. Let it know you appreciate what it did for you, but you don't need it anymore. Ask it if it wouldn't like to retire from that job, maybe do something else. The third method is based on behavioral activation, and it takes the opposite approach. Visualize the cult leader, elder, or some symbol of the group. Let out all the anger you have. Yell, punch, tell them no one invited them to the party, kick them out of bed, break glass, do whatever you need to do. So those are three approaches. Obviously, there are more, but I thought I'd talk about those. Now, I have a caution about this next section of my talk, and that is that I'm going to talk very explicitly about sexuality. And this may make you uncomfortable. It may trigger you. So please feel free to turn off the video, to leave the room. I'm not going to take it personally. Please take care of yourselves. So to continue, sometimes these negative voices not only interfere with sexual pleasure, but can result in compromising sexual functioning. When your cult leader is psychologically in bed with you, it's very hard to have an enjoyable time. Oops, sorry. I want to briefly address a few sexual dysfunctions, but keep in mind as I do that almost always there is the trifecta of biological, psychological, and social cultural factors that contribute. Psychotherapy is essential when there is a trauma history, but often it is not enough because sex is a body response. So it's often important to use behavioral techniques to work with the body. The sexual response is a very complex and sensitive neural system, and reasons why it may not work according to plan are likewise complex. For example, one study found that women in heterosexual relationships had more trouble being orgasmic when they didn't feel respected or loved by their partner. Although the atmosphere of the relationship has been found to be a significant variable in multiple studies, this is not a consistent finding across the board. A satisfying relationship, whether same or opposite sex, does not guarantee an ecstatic sexual experience, and a bad relationship doesn't preclude it. We all know, for example, that makeup sex can be very erotic and enjoyable. Likewise, sexual trauma of any kind does not necessarily produce orgasmic difficulties. However, often people with sexual trauma from childhood need to redefine sex as pleasurable rather redefine touch, I'm sorry, redefine touch as pleasurable rather than dangerous. And if you're in this category, I heartily recommend Wendy Maltz's book and video called Relearning Touch. In it, she has non-sexual, playful exercises that help people redefine touch as pleasurable rather than hurtful. And in the references, I've given you that reference and that link. Another significant variable in sexual dysfunction is anxiety. For blood engorgement to occur in the genitals and people to objectively feel aroused, they need to be relaxed. The sensate focus exercises, as well as directed masturbation, are the primary behavioral interventions for these issues. And I'm going to mention those in a minute. But due to time limits, I won't be able to go into detail today on these methods. So what I've done is I've provided slides with the details, and I've also provided references for you for anybody that wants to look into them further. There are videos and there are articles, etc. And I'll be glad to discuss them more in detail in the Q&A or discussion period if anybody wants. The traditional way of looking at the sexual response cycle is desire, arousal, orgasm, and resolution. But it turns out that this is more a male model. For women, especially past the initial passionate phase of relationships, whether it's opposite or same sex, desire and arousal often occur simultaneously, or desire may actually follow arousal. Women often need to be tactily stimulated before feeling the desire. In contrast, men are more likely to feel the desire first. Although everyone is capable of achieving orgasm, the female orgasm is less predictable and less dependable than those of men. There are different types of orgasm that women have experienced, depending upon the anatomical area in which they were stimulated. So there's something like three to five known types of orgasms. And again, I can go over those at a later time. Some women are capable of ejaculating during orgasm as well. Hormones that facilitate the loving and bonding that usually accompanies the orgasm are oxytocin, also known as the love hormone, and vasopressin, also known as the monogamy molecule. Although these chemicals affect both men and women, women are more sensitive to oxytocin and men are more sensitive to vasopressin. For orgasmic difficulties, the recommended intervention is called directed masturbation. For both men and women. Now, I know this can be a huge trigger for many of you, and because most people did it anyway in the cult, there may be guilt and shame surrounding the practice. Nevertheless, self-pleasuring is the best way to get to know what your body likes and needs to become aroused enough to reach the orgasmic level. This slide shows one protocol for helping women achieve orgasm. I also recommend the book by Lonnie Barback. This is a classic book called For Yourself, which gives masturbation exercises. Okay. Oops. Sorry. Premature ejaculation and erectile dysfunction are two sexual difficulties with which men often struggle, particularly when they have been abused as children. But trauma is not the only reason for these issues, and this slide identifies some of the causes. One cause of premature ejaculation is often the result of an inability to contain the sensations of arousal without ejaculating. You'll see that as the last, as the last point there. Two recommended behavioral methods are the start-stop technique and the Simmons technique. These raise the threshold of ejaculatory inevitability, also known as the point of no return, helping the man learn to contain those arousal sensations. By the way, premature ejaculation as a diagnosis is actually very sexist because nobody complains when a woman comes very quickly. For erectile dysfunction, the first line of defense, though, is a biological intervention. The class of medications known as the PDE5s, which are Viagra, Cialis, etc. But these are only effective in about 2/3 of men. Psychotherapy is often indicated. You may know that antidepressant medication, the SSRIs, for example, are notorious for delaying orgasm in both men and women. So ironically, this side effect is a benefit for men with premature ejaculation because it raises, again, the threshold of ejaculation. For sexual issues involving desire or arousal, even orgasm, the Masters and Johnson Sensate focus exercises have stood the test of time. They were developed to remove the anxiety that often accompanies sexuality. These are a hierarchy of touching experiences where there is no pressure for intercourse. The touch is to be enjoyed for its own sake. The 5-phase protocol takes a couple from non-sexual, sensual touching to intercourse if desired. The pace is set by the couple, done over many weeks or months. These exercises are best done with the guidance of a therapist, though, because there are certain protocols and instructions that are best given in coordination with the therapist. They are also good for the desire discrepant couple, where levels of interest in having sex are discordant. And these are the 2 slides, which I will not be going over. I also like the video by Linda Weiner on the Sensate Focus experiences, and that reference is on this slide. So, all this being said, when the goal of sex is the orgasm, you're missing the pleasure of the process. Don't get so focused on the destination that you miss out on the pleasurable journey. We look forward to continue this discussion in real time, and thank you for your attention.